So, guys, it's that time of the week again. Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Kickabout. I suppose all the talk this week has been about the potential of a European Super League. I suppose as well the last 48 hours since Sunday has been a bit of a nightmare for football fans. Has been a bit very emotional. Has been very depressing at times. But it seems like the right kind of outcome has come from it. But what we'll do is obviously welcome back O'Hara to the podcast, Shane, Donnacha, and Eno as well. We might just get straight into it, lads, and just ask your views and opinions on everything in the last 48 hours from when the news initially broke to the developments, because so much has changed since Sunday. And pretty much every couple of hours it seems like news is breaking. But I might just start with you, Shane. What was your feelings? What was your thoughts initially? Obviously, you are a Man United fan, so if you want to talk to us from that perspective.
Yeah, well, I suppose we've kind of heard murmurs or rumours about it happening for so long that even when it got announced or leaked on Sunday, you kind of just still thought, oh, they're just putting it out there, they're testing the waters, see what's going to happen. But then as the hours tick by, it was like, I can't believe this is actually happening. And it was embarrassing. It was like, it made me angry. And then, full circle, you kind of felt proud. And then I've completely gone back on myself in the last few hours or 12 hours and don't feel proud at all. I feel completely embarrassed. And yeah, as a Man United fan, it's just left a real sour taste in my mouth. And that's going to probably take a long time, not from the players. I'm like, the players stood up, but yeah, it kind of makes you look at yourself a bit as a fan of one of these big clubs and what does it mean even,
Yeah, Ian, we might just continue just while we're on Man United. What was your feeling towards the club, towards the owners? Did you contemplate potentially not unfollowing Manchester United, a team that you followed for so many years?
Yeah, I mean, you can joke about it. I mean, at the time, it's just pure outrage, and nobody can fine tune their outrage. It was all or nothing. You either completely went mad, or you just didn't react to it at all. And I mean, as Shane said, it's been hinted for so long that you'd think you'd be kind of prepped for something like that being announced, and then it does come true, and you just see the extent of just how negative the whole thing was. Like, it's just bizarre to think about. At the very, very start when it's announced, nobody ever put it into perspective from the very start. As soon as you saw that Sky Sports announcement that it was Manchester United, it was Liverpool, it was Chelsea, Arsenal, etc. It was not Joel Glazer, John Henry. It wasn't any of their names mentioned. It was clubs. Straight away, your negativity is aimed towards the club as a whole, which isn't fair. It was six. If we're specifically talking about the English clubs here, it's six people who dragged this whole thing through the muck, and that's just the way it is. And again, I suppose afterwards we saw the likes of Henderson and Shaw and Maguire and things like that come out, but it's hard to imagine how those six individuals, and obviously the other ones in the other leagues, thought that this would ever be viable. Not communicating down through the lines of staff or players or anything like that, not bringing it to anyone's attention, and just sitting behind the scenes thinking, all right, yeah, we'll set this up and we'll make our millions and everyone will follow suit because we are the big six, in air quotes, I suppose. The whole thing was just a farce. Like, it was, there's no real words to explain it. I'm absolutely delighted the arse fell out of it now, but I mean, it's been a dramatic 48 to 72 hours, really, as a football fan.
From a Liverpool perspective, O'Hara, obviously we'll get your views as well, but we might just touch on obviously Klopp coming out, James Miller coming out doing interviews, and they were the kind of, and Bamford as well, I suppose, they were the first kind of batch of players to be interviewed after the announcement broke on Sunday. Do you want to just share your views on that, O'Hara?
Yeah, like, they were put in such a difficult position. Like, you feel so sorry for them at the time, because like it's such a disgraceful situation that they were put in by the owners of their club. Like, the owners have gone behind everyone's back and be like, sorry lads, yeah, we think this is great because we're going to get billions out of this. And like the likes, like the club and players, they had a match to prepare for, and they wake up then that morning to this news, or like had they been up and they seen it the previous night. And the owners, like, obviously it was 12 clubs, but like the Liverpool owners would know, like, Liverpool have a match tonight, and Liverpool staff and players are going to have to be in front of cameras, and they're obviously going to be asked about this, and they haven't even been briefed, or like they saw the same thing we did in the news. So like that, obviously, when you know Klopp is going to have to do a pre-match and post-match interview as a fan, and obviously we were so furious at the time, you're like, I hope he comes out and he absolutely throws the owners under the bus and he's like, fuck this, I've no interest in it. Like, at the same time, he only had as much information we did, so like he kind of had to say as much as he could, and in fairness, he said what he could. Like, he said, you know, he didn't backtrack on the fact that he had said in 2019 that he wasn't a fan of it. You know, he said that, not my opinion still hasn't changed, but for the fact that, like, through the whole thing, obviously it's relatively resolved, like from the English team's point of view at this stage, but like the first any of us ever heard from any of the owners was this morning, like the following morning after the clubs had pulled out or were saying they were going to pull out. Like, the people who were actually put in front of cameras and had to come up with some sort of a statement were the players and the manager, which was just such a ludicrous situation to have put them in.
Yeah.
It's so disrespectful to them.
Yeah, and before we go on to the statements that were released by the owners, Donnacha, might just ask you, how worried were you come Sunday, Monday, that this could actually happen, or did you always kind of deep down believe that it wouldn't happen, and as Ian described it, the arse would fall out of it at some stage along the line, or were you genuinely worried?
Yeah, so initial response was total bewilderment, shock. Obviously found it very upsetting, and kind of, I've been pretty vocal in certain digital spaces already this week as it was unfolding. I was speaking, you know, on a public forum on Sunday night about it. I said on Sunday that when we all agreed that this was a power play, this was designed to undermine UEFA launching the Champions League. This was so now it's so hilariously naive. Like, this is like the most incompetent embarrassment of like powerful people that I can ever remember. Like, Florentino Perez goes on Spanish TV the other night, and it's so embarrassing, the shit that he's coming up with. Like, where are you getting your research that 16 to 24-year-olds, let's shorten games? Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's kind of life-affirming to your own intelligence when you realize that people can be worth billions and still be dumb as fuck, you know, and just not appreciate, like, how can you read the room so badly? Honestly, it's like some guy rocking up to a bar mitzvah and he starts making Holocaust jokes. Read the room, lads. Like, this was never going to happen. So from that standpoint, I didn't think at any stage, I thought this was not going to happen the whole way. And then I woke up on, was it maybe Monday, and there was talk of the contracts are signed, this is legally binding, we're pressing ahead. So the rumor mill, like, I was treating it like a transfer window in that, don't know. And then the fact the contract was signed, and Miguel Delaney is saying, like, I know football, he knows it better than us, this is going to happen. There's going to be huge fallout. But Miguel Delaney said on Second Captains on Monday that it was going to happen, and they had him on again today, and he's like, well, you know, Ken Early said not in a million years, and I was totally with Ken Early. So it's not all is well that ends well. As a fan, yeah, like I was absolutely willing to walk away from Liverpool, because if that Super League happened, that football club is now a different entity. It's a different thing. If they're not competing for European Cups, well, then the club has died. I think maybe a little bit aligned to the FC United of Manchester movement that happened when the Glazers took over. And now I have an insight into what they must have felt at the time. But yeah, like, it hasn't happened. It was the worst thought out, most embarrassing fucking proposal. Like, you absolute idiots. And we all got to see it play out on live TV. Like, this put Game of Thrones to shame in how dramatic it was and how it evolved, and how Chelsea are leaving. Now Man City are leaving. Liverpool United are going to be left. Now we're hearing these other crowd are leaving. PSG told them to fuck off. It was just like, it was like 6 people against the world, and everybody is just pointing and laughing at them when they realized that when Boris Johnson says you're not going to get any finance for security for match days, you're not going to get any work permits, these guys must have just shat themselves. I think that was the turning point, when the UK government was like, nah, never happening. That was it. That was, and as much as I like hate Boris Johnson and his Brexit here and the fact he's a Tory scumbag, like, weirdly, it was what he said. I think that was the turning point. That was the big turning point.
Yeah. Like, to even just listen to all of us at the start, you can feel the emotions, you can feel the upset, the kind of trauma that we've all been put through as football fans. And at the end of the day, it was football fans that potentially prevented this European Super League from going ahead. But obviously, a couple of us touched on already the statements from the owners. But Ian, I might just come to you first on the Glazers' statement or apology in inverted commas. What did you make of it? Do you think it's sincere, genuine? Take it away,
You'd be naive to fall for a word of it. Even John Henry's was verbal, and it's impossible to believe them. You look at every one of them, the money they had to push this through, that's what they're about. It's just the money. This whole crack of apologies, PR stunts, and everything like that, they'll just pass that on to whoever's there that can make them look better. And right now, these apologies have literally just come from them, and they've realized, oh shit, we've made a monumental mistake here, and we're going to be on the back foot for a long time to come. How can I make myself look remotely sorry? I don't feel it, but I want to come across that I do. The clubs are businesses to them. They don't, from an outside perspective, they don't understand the history of all these clubs. They don't see what it means to fans. They don't see what it means to even some of the players. We've always known that money was ruling football, and this whole Super League announcement just felt like the final nail in the coffin that we were right. That all this talk of Neymar's big, I know PSG didn't go into it, but these big 200 million transfers, these 80 millions for Maguire's, the 100 millions for every odd player, it was always tipping over the edge. And then this Super League came along, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and everybody just fought back against it. Don't fall for the apologies. It's not over. I mean, just as before we came on, the Sky Sports News announcement that I was telling you broke about executives being told to stand down from their positions in the Premier League. That's another story in itself now that has to develop over the next couple of weeks. Like, Joel Glazer made a statement today behind pen and paper, behind the screen, behind all the digital outlet. Not once did he come out, like, to me, the man is still invisible since he took over the club. I don't even know if he's real. There's a photo there that comes up of him every now and again, and you're thinking, that could be anyone. Like, he does not speak. He still doesn't speak. Ed Woodward got the boot last night. Grand, from a United perspective, I'm happy he got the boot, but he's also going to be considered the fall guy. He did take a role in this new Super League, but he's not in the bracket of the 6 we're calling that drove it. That's the Glazers, and it's just these apology statements are just, they're not even worth the paper they were initially written on, or the fucking laptops they were written on.
I think there's a commonality across all of the statements and apologies. You know, in The Wolf of Wall Street, when Leonardo DiCaprio goes into the penny stocks and he's got all the lads around the table and he's on the phone to a client and he's like, listen, this is a great tech company. Just give me some, 10 grand, whatever. Sound fair enough? And he gives him the finger. That is the level of sincerity that Henry has portrayed, that Glazer has portrayed. And like the thing with Henry is, fair play to John Henry I give him a little bit of credit in terms of he took sole responsibility. I will give him a slight bit of credit with that because that is him telling the truth and that is him just owning up to being a scumbag. But this is him, oops, I got caught. He probably turns around to his wife and he goes, Jesus, our customers aren't happy, fucking dickheads, And I want them out now. I've been an FSG supporter because it's hard not to be when myself and O'Hara will remember vividly Hicks and Gillette, no idea about football, which ironically is the exact same situation here, but nearly ended the club. And apparently we were very close to going under. John Henry comes in, buys us for a snip, like 350 million, now worth 2.5 billion. So he got a bargain and we got loads of success. Bought players, gave new contracts, stadium development, trophies. Jurgen Klopp, the best coach in the world, pretty much, and we got him. So, but they totally duped me. It's all irrelevant now compared to this carry on, and none of these guys ever learn from their mistakes, which is what amazes me. That if you're high performing in any pursuit, in order to get there, you have to make mistakes, but you have to learn from them. This is the 5th time that John Henry's had to apologize for some shit. Whether it was ticket prices, furloughing staff, they tried to trademark Liverpool. They tried to trademark the city's name. And it was just like, here you go. Oops, sorry. Here, what about? Oops, sorry. What about? And this one is just the Mac Daddy of it. So don't believe them. Get them out. That is the next step to all this. And the problems still exist with money in football. They are chronic, but at least we still have fair competition on the pitch, at least for now.
Yeah, like if you're looking at like even Shane and Gaz there, right? Yeah, Man United. We're here and we're gonna spout like Glazer out, they're rats, they're this and that and the other. But how do you solve the problem? Like we're gonna stand here giving out about them. Is anyone going to want to, I suppose, in air quotes, step in if we did manage to get rid of them? Like
fans are in the stadium now, I reckon they'd be in trouble. I genuinely think the anger is so vigorous right now with the support that, like, fair play. Like, I never thought I'd say it in my life. Fair play to the Chelsea fans, turning up last night and actually, like, literally putting a physical presence there to make a statement. Not to go back too much on the Glazers, but like his statement today, he's never done an interview since he's been at Man United about the club. He said in his statement today, "Oh, I'm going to work hard to rebuild the trust." Fuck off. You have no trust. You've been with the club for 16 years. All you've done is take dividends. There is no trust to rebuild. There was no trust in the first place. Everyone who stepped away, like Donnacha said earlier, FC United were born. They've all been vindicated in this last 48 hours, 72 hours.
Yeah. Just snake oil salesmen. They're just businessmen. It's like that analogy, like the scorpion and the frog going over the river, and I need to hop on your back, and no, but you'll sting me or we both die. And halfway over the river, the scorpion stings the frog. We're both going to die now. Yeah, well, it's in my nature. It's in their nature for these guys to exploit every legal nook and cranny to maximize profit. Kaveh Solakal said it on, the quote was, "Our role is to maximize profit. The good of the game is secondary." It's like any industry. They don't operate any differently. Like no one, would you like Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg to take over your club now? Like, would you fuck? The problem now is no one's got a spare 4 billion quid hanging around to take over a football club. So we are kind of stuck with a huge problem, but at least we can cling on and be joyous to the fact that it is actually true. The fans do actually have the power. We actually do. We mobilized. Like Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, like they sort of led the charge on this one. And I don't want to even have the conversation about, oh yeah, but they work for Sky and they're hypocrites. And stop. The distance between Sky, listen, Sky's pay-per-view nonsense was money grabbing scheme. Yeah, they rolled it back. They are a business as well, and they're not custodians of a club or custodians of a sport. They are a full business. So the distance between that to this was enormous in my book. Don't know what happens from here. Like, maybe that's worth expanding on what we all think is gonna go down from now on, or like punishments. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, and just before we touch on that, I just had a question for Shane. Just obviously looking back on when the Glazers took over at United in 2005, and I'll put this question obviously to Ahar as well for FSG when they took over at Liverpool. Do you think their intention was this European Super League from the get-go, or was to, as I said, to Americanize the European sports, or do you think that's something that just developed as kind of time went on? I'd like to get your take on that, Shane.
Yeah, I think you'd probably be giving them too much credit to think that they had that much foresight or long-term planning in them. I think they saw a good business opportunity. They bought the club with loads of leverage. They bought it at an absolute snippet of what they should have paid for it. They're paying back huge interest on it every year. Like, people can talk about emotions, it being a real football club, blah, blah, blah. They literally saw it as a business opportunity. It was a good business opportunity. They took advantage of it, and they're still reaping the awards. And all this was them looking to multiply the rewards, because a club as big as Man United still doesn't make a hell of a lot of money compared to what these billionaires are used to. You know, if someone's like in charge of a tech company or, you know, pharmaceutical, whatever, that's creating this amount of turnover, there's a hell of a lot of profit involved. Like, these football clubs don't actually make that much profit because they're always having to buy new players, you know, build a stadium, etc. And all this was a business opportunity that they saw that they could, you know, make more money. That's literally it.
Yeah. Just to follow on. Yeah. So as you said, like that, the whole thing was just a business opportunity. But it's like that. None of them are, you know, from England or used to the English game, or, you know, they're all just businessmen who, like you said, saw a business opportunity. And so you can see, like, at the very, very basic level, them being businessmen, you can see why they were drawn to it. Because it's like, oh, well, like, what? Liverpool won the Champions League 2 years ago and, like, got to the final the year before, and we won the league, but we actually mightn't even qualify for the Champions League. So, like, the owners be like, how does that compute that we're, you know, making this amount 1 year, this amount the next, and then there's a drop off? Or like that with Arsenal. Like, Arsenal, when the owners would have bought them, were a Champions League club, and sure, they've been a shambles the last couple of years. So it's because they had no love for the game or understanding of the game, because they saw it as a business opportunity to guarantee a constant income and a constant profit, where that's just not what sport is or what football is. Like, it's, the whole thing is based on merit. And, like, again, that's one of the biggest gripes that Neville and Carragher had with it. It was like, you know, sport needs to change, and, like, people at times don't like change, but, like, there's been sport throughout history there's been change throughout history in most sports, and in football as well. You know, obviously European Cup then became the Champions League, and there's been attempts to revamp it, and some of them have gone well, some of them haven't. You know, obviously they've announced the new ones that'll be coming in a couple of years now as well. But just trying to have it that it's a level, constant thing of income. They just didn't really understand that you get that amount of income by earning it, and by your team being one of the best teams in Europe and getting there on merit. And they just couldn't understand the fluctuation of it, which
I think we're starting to realise, this is what I hope was quite a positive spin, is that maybe a football club, a European football club, is actually doesn't have a very good inherent business model, because these guys control P&L accounts and make decisions that affects balance sheets. And like for them, maybe they are long term now going to go, right, we need to get out of here because this is not like any other industry that we've ever dipped our toe into. It's a total outlier and it's special, and we've bastardized it and it's failed so hilariously and spectacularly. Maybe in the medium term they're going to get out of here, because by definition these billionaires are control freaks. If FSG have controlled the Red Sox for so many years and all those decisions, if their bottom line is dependent hugely on something that they can't control, yes, they can throw loads of money at players, yes, they can hire the best coaches, but that actually doesn't guarantee you everything in football. Unfortunately, it guarantees you a lot. It probably guarantees you a seat at the top table. Chelsea, City being great examples of that. But I mean, City can still get beaten by Burnley. Chelsea can still, try to retain a title and finish 10th. And these guys, that's too risky. As someone with a pure business hat on, there's way too much variability in your income levels year to year. It's so risky. You're actually playing Russian roulette. So if it's about making money and stability, like, get out, go leave. Like, you don't know the game. Did you hear there was a line earlier about one of them had to ask what color the team was playing in when he went to a game. You know what I mean? Like, this ain't for you, lads. And now more so than ever, you are standing naked in front of the entire footballing world, and you are like, I can't even imagine how embarrassed they are. It's just the most embarrassing thing, and it's so funny to watch now that we're past, the uncertainty.
But the thing is with that, Donnacha, just to finish up like that, like, I don't know if they really even would be embarrassed. Like, a lot of the apologies or the statements that have come out, it's all just PR trying to placate the fans, and like the people around them pointing out, like, lads, you royally fucked this up. Like, you need to say something. But like, realistically, like, the Super League, or a concept of a Super League, is not going away. Like, they've been entirely slapped in the face over it at this point, but they'll go back to the drawing board and they'll come back and try and figure out a better way, or a way that it'll be snuck past the fans. But like,
I agree. That's why I think the following few weeks and whatever sanctions come, it's so important that the like, UEFA are crooks as well, but the FAs, they need to get this right now, because this is now the opportunity to nip this in the bud. I don't know if it's possible to do so because there's so much money in football, but the fans want them to try at least. So
yeah, I think Dave took the words out of my mouth there. I don't fully believe they are embarrassed. I mean, as you said, these are businessmen. Businessmen have ideas. Businessmen's ideas fail and they go again. That's how they stay on top of the pyramid. That's how you make your money. You don't give up when one idea fails. You say, okay, learning curve, I'll go again. How can I adapt that this will work and I will eventually make money out of it? The Super League is a step that failed. So they're going to go back to the previous step that they had and say, okay, right before we announced the Super League, whereabouts were we in our negotiations? We were at this level here. What can we tweak at this stage that will move us back to where we were at the top level without all the animosity that we received? The only problem they're going to hit now is that people know that they're capable of it. The rumors only went on for so long and then they disappeared. Now they're back and they're in full effect because they tried it. So to go down that avenue again will be silly. And now they know kind of people's capacity to fight against it. And fair play to the people that did, as Shane said earlier, the Chelsea fans showing a physical presence outside the stadium. I'm sure there was more pictures and videos that we might not have seen of other clubs, but they're a prime example when you can. But this is, like, it's not gone away. Like, the last 72 hours have been incredible television and tweets and everything that goes with it. We might have a hiatus for a couple of days while this simmers down and these 6 bigwigs try and find their feet again, but they're not gone by end. They're not done. This is just, I suppose, to them, for the level of income they have, a minor setback, and they'll take a step back and renew things and go again. But that might be years, but That's how the rich stay rich. They're going to stay on top of the pyramid for a long time to come.
Yeah.
That's the thing I'd be worried about. Sorry, Gary. Because, as you said, they're all businessmen, so they're just going to be looking for the next big way of making the money back. Where, like, you know, obviously there was such uproar of it that you'd kind of be worried that everyone's just like, oh, brilliant. See what we did there? We stopped that happening. And then just be like, kind of sit back down and be like, Grant, go back to the way things were. Like, they'll be going back to the drawing board and trying to sort it out and come back in with one. So one of the things that would worry me is, you know, obviously so many different like clubs and leagues and stuff came out with such, like UEFA as well, came out with such damning statements, and the Premier League. The one I'd be a bit wary of is FIFA's one was very kind of just as much as they needed to say, because obviously they, you know, you'd forget because so many things happen so quickly, but you'd forget that like the Club World Cup, they were obviously trying to expand that and try and make that into a summer tournament or a far more expanded tournament. So it could easily be that a year or two down the line, the European Super League guys have just teamed up with FIFA and they're going to make their own version of it.
FIFA can't really say shit at the minute. Like, I mean, their rep took a hit and a half not too long ago. Now is their opportunity to look like the good guys again. Oh, we're going to put our foot in and we're going to stop this Super League. Fantastic that they did. You know, we're going to side with them in that respect, of course. But coming out with their statements about how, I don't know, what did they call themselves, like an honourable organisation or something like that? Like, don't give us that bullshit when we've gone through Sepp Blatter and what we've gone through. Like, you know, at the end of the day, they are also a business. The 2022 World Cup wouldn't be in Qatar if they weren't a fucking business. And that's just the bottom line. The business end of things is going to take over from the sport. But I think, and Gaz, you might have a point on this, I'm not sure, seeing as how you haven't spoken in a while. We're going through all the outrage that has been caused by all of this. And we mentioned before, I can't remember whether we were on or off air, about sort of losing the animosity between the likes of Man United and Liverpool, that it was a unification for once, and that there's, you know, a Liverpool side with Neville, United side with Carragher, just the whole thing came together. But from reading Twitter, which is probably a bad thing, it almost seemed like there still was a little battle on who can be most outraged by this. So the general consensus was the Super League is a load of shite, chuck it out. But no matter what went on, it was still, as Donnacha mentioned earlier, what's Gary Neville saying? Sure, he worked for Sky, they charge for pay-per-view games, or, oh, I can't believe Gary Neville used the "you'll never walk alone" against Liverpool. Like, when we know contextually he was using it to make a good point. He wasn't dissing Liverpool for using it. He was saying that John Henry is completely gone against it. Like, do you still think that it's petty enough, despite all we've gone through, that those little bites are still there, that we can't just say, can we just work on getting rid of this first and put your petty bullshit to one side for a few minutes and we'll just focus on the bigger task at hand? Like, or like, can you ever fully get rid of these little bites between these fans and clubs?
I think intelligent fans will be able to put it aside. I don't know. Don't ask me what ratio there are of them versus, oh, Gary Neville slating Arsenal and he's got an agenda against Arsenal. It's probably always going to be an element of that, but it does seem for the most part like there has been a unification, at least among supporter groups, among players, well, they're quite united anyway, because they you know, no matter if you play for United or Liverpool, you share a career and you share commonality so closely with these other guys, even though they're rivals. But yeah, it's a very valid point that there was a lot of the tribalism still permeated through. Well, Twitter's going to Twitter, isn't it?
Cesspit.
Oh, it's
It really is. And I'm on it 4 hours a day. More for me.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, I believe the Spurs fans are out protesting ahead of the game tonight. I think Man United fans have a scheduled protest on Saturday. I know a couple of Liverpool fans are out as well over the last couple of days or outside Anfield, putting up the flags and the signs and stuff like that. But just to touch on kind of what O'Hara said and Ian said about that these owners aren't embarrassed that potentially they're plotting something down the line. There was just a piece from the Glazers statement that it said, "We continue to believe that European football needs to become more sustainable throughout the pyramid for the long term. However, we fully accept that the Super League was not the right way to go about it." Like, I just question that straight. Like, why even put that in if you're supposedly apologetic about everything? Why put a couple of lines in like that? So I think it just really shows the truth, or the face behind the mask of all these football owners. And
They might as well just say we need more money. That's basically what they're saying in a roundabout way. We want more money. No, we need more money, but actually we just want more money. We don't need it. We want it. And that's
well, I think in the case of the other 6, it's certainly a case of we need more money. I mean, Juventus need to find 100 million pretty soon, or there's a risk that they might be defaulting on loans. Barca are broke, Real are broke. I think they were the need, and the Premier League were the want.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to simplify it to that.
Yeah.
It explains why they're still there. I mean,
Yeah,
three of them technically still haven't left yet. You know what I mean?
It's just Real and Barca now. I think Atletico, I could be wrong.
No, Juve, Barca and Real are still there, because Paddy Power, typical Paddy Power, they're on top of everything. Had a meme up earlier on from The Office of the 3 lads standing around pointing at each other saying, like, who's going to go next? But I mean, like,
yeah,
it's absolutely crazy. When one went, like, we're talking about, I suppose we're specifically referencing the English teams here. Sheikh Mansour does not need that money. But when the invite is there and you're offered more, of course you're going to take it. Like, you know, you don't even have, like, I work in accountancy. You don't even have to work in accountancy. You just have to watch TV and live your life to know that if businesses want to make money, businesses will find a way to make money. These boys are nowhere near the 6 English clubs. They're nowhere near financially unstable that they need this. But as Shane said, you should have just wrote at the bottom of that statement, listen, we're going to find a new way to make a few more bob, and we'll be back to you when we do. That's pretty much what it is.
100%.
But do you know, like you just said about Mansour, City was the weirdest one for me, because City have been sports washing for, whatever about using that term, it's an in term or whatever, but they have literally been sports washing. As Gary Neville said, like, I've been over to where their stadium is, and that whole area is unbelievable. The money they've put in, they've tried to paint themselves in a good light. I don't understand. Like, they don't need the money, and they're trying to sports wash. So why were they getting involved?
I think it came down to it seemed, apparently the rumors were that City had resisted this, and Chelsea to a certain extent, for 6 or 7 months, and were very much apprehensive, not because of any morality or wanting to save the game, but they're like, well, hang on, what's in it for me? This kind of sounds like all you guys are going to improve and have a safer financial footing, whereas we already have it, and it's an advantage to us. So I think more so than any kind of moralistic principle of we don't like this idea, it's like, there's way more in it for you guys. The upside for Liverpool, for United, was way bigger than for City. City are already on top. They already have unlimited, pretty much, financial resources. And then the other thing that would have turned the corner for them is when it got so much traction and it seemed as if looks like it's about to happen, City aren't going to want to be left behind. So they're like, okay, yeah, fine. If it's going like this, we'll be in the party. But,
Yeah. Just before, because I was thinking about, obviously, talking about the consequences, as Donnacha touched on, what all of our views are on what ramifications take place. Also, maybe might touch a bit on UEFA, and obviously they've kind of gone under the carpet in all this to a certain extent. Maybe what the future holds for ownership and football. But O'Hara, I just want to ask you, how laughable was it, the inclusion of the so-called top 6, and how they selected the top 6?
Oh, it was absolutely ludicrous. Like, it was actually hilarious having announced it, that the results then that the teams proceeded to have. It was like they were nearly trying to just stamp through the fact that like we're through into this Super League, but actually we're kind of shit at the moment. Like what Chelsea drew, Liverpool drew, like most of them dropped points. Like it was absolute nonsense. And like again, this is the problem when you're talking about it. People like fans of the particular clubs are going to think you're being tribal and just getting in ahead of them. But like it's genuinely relevant points. Like both Arsenal and Tottenham are just laughing stocks generally. They're both shambles. Like even right as the day that it was announced about Super League, Mourinho then was sacked by Tottenham 6 days before the League Cup final. Like what sort of like that's just entirely comical. Like I couldn't get my head around it. Like why is it so important to get him out less than a week before a cup final when like he had gotten them to the final? But yeah, like Arsenal as well. Arsenal nearly doesn't even require explanation. Like when was the last time they were in the Champions League? They definitely haven't been in for 3 or 4 years. Like, and what, they're in 9th or 10th and getting what, a 97th minute equaliser against Fulham. Like,
Did anyone? There's a skit going around. And there's a skit going around with Irish lads who are doing like a fake conference call with all the clubs, and it's like what PSG aren't in it because the Spurs aren't in it. What or Arsenal aren't in it. What we kicked Arsenal out like it. When did we set up this group? We set this group up in like 2014. Why do we not kick Arsenal? All right, fine, Arsenal can be in. And then it's like, oh well, Bayern aren't going to be in it because Spurs are in it. It's like, what the? Who let these people in this fucking group?
It's like Manchester United have not won a trophy, and I think it's 5 of the last 7 seasons. You know, like
yeah, like Tottenham have never even won a European Cup, and last time they won the league was about what 50 years ago.
1961.
Yeah, like, that's insane. Like how? Like Daniel Levy must have done some serious.
Did you see Brendan Rodgers was taking credit for it today?
Was it? No, I didn't see that.
He said, I like Brendan Rodgers. I know you Liverpool fans might not, but
no, I've always been a fan.
Like him.
He basically said because of the performance that he's had on the pitch with Leicester City, that they've had to do something because they were panicked.
They were the disruptors. He was calling them the disruptors. Yeah, brilliant. And yeah, separately, I am a massive Brendan Rodgers fan and always was.
Yeah, same. I've never had a bad word for him.
Apart from how he comes across in that Being Liverpool documentary.
No, I like the less said about that documentary.
Just it was too David Brent. Anyway.
Yeah. I don't know how you guys feel, but do you reckon, say they took out Arsenal, Spurs, and they put in, I know we were kind of saying like Ajax, and I don't know, maybe I'm trying like a club just from a different country, because it was like the European Super League, and there was 4 countries covered. Like, I think that was almost one of their biggest downfalls was it was 6 English teams.
I think just the format, the fact that you don't have to qualify, that you have this God-given right to exist was the issue. Like if it was Ajax and Benfica instead of Spurs and Arsenal, or like even if 4 of the teams were unable to be relegated, the whole thing falls apart for me. Because it goes against what football is, that there's no jeopardy. Like even if it was United, Liverpool, Real, Barca, those 4 can't get relegated and the rest can. Well, then now that's not sport, as Pep Guardiola actually said brilliantly. It's just not sport anymore. Even if one team wasn't allowed to get relegated, it's not sport.
Literally, because the problem as well, like these are just 12 of the richest clubs currently. Like had they gone ahead with this thing 30 years ago, it would have been an entirely different setup. So like, why can you say, oh well, we're the best, so we're now guaranteeing ourselves we're not going to be relegated? Like, you absolutely could easily not be the best in 10 years. Like,
what if Newcastle's takeover went ahead?
Yeah, exactly.
And suddenly they're the first or second richest team in the Premier League. Newcastle would probably get invited then as one of the 4 teams that they never told us how to get invited would show up to the party.
But this is the bullshit that Florentino Perez was coming out with. Like, instantly when it came out, and it was like, Grant, we've 12 clubs confirmed. We want 15 founding members, but there's going to be 5 clubs that we invite every year based on their merit of the previous season. And then obviously everyone straight away is like, well, that is absolute bullshit. What? So these 15 teams are just guaranteed to get in, even if, like Donnacha was saying, like Chelsea won the league and then they finished 10th the following season. Like, what? Like, how is that logical? And then he was then being like, oh no, hold on now. We're not saying it's a closed book. We're saying we can let people in every year. Like, what are you talking about?
Did you see what the financial breakdown was going to be for one of the qualified teams? So let's say Leicester performed brilliantly in the domestic league and they get into the Super League. If Leicester went ahead and won the Super League, they would earn 30% of what Real Madrid would earn for finishing last.
It's insane. Like, they were going to get what? They were going to get about 450 million just for accepting the invitation.
The golden handshakes.
It's all down to
gatekeeping,
sheer business again. Like the way they're looking at it is, what gets the most receipts, full stop? Is it CSK Moscow versus Ludogorets in the Champions League group stages fucking fighting for third place? Or is it the El Clasicos, the derbies, the big games? Now, where they got Spurs from, I don't know. The big games. What gets the receipts? And of course, as football fans, even now, I could sit here and go on to LiveScore, whatever app you use, and you can see XYZ games at the weekend. That's going to be a cracker. I'm going to watch it. And it could be El Clasico because the La Liga is tight at the top. It could be whatever, the cup final that's at the weekend. But your immediate attention looks for those big name clubs and who they're playing. You look at the Premier League fixtures this weekend and you'll see, I don't know, Burnley and Sheffield United, and your eyes will completely go, where's United? Where's Liverpool? Where's Chelsea? Who are they playing this weekend? It's just the way we are as football supporters that you always want to watch what we consider to be the best teams. And they've just picked up on that and just sold everybody and said, grand, we're going to pick up on that and we're going to make a competition with them. But where the fuck they were going with the anti-competitiveness.
Just purely like,
robbed it.
There's the demand, here's the supply. Let's increase the supply because the demand is there. No nuance, no understanding of the environment, no understanding of all of the many variables that exist beyond that. It's like these businessmen, like, I mean, I reckon a 15-year-old could potentially do a better job than some of these lads.
It's like somebody gave you a TV channel that only has reruns and no new TV or film was ever made. And they went, you have to watch reruns for the rest of your life. There you go.
That's a shout.
Fire away. We're never going to have writers. We're never going to have new actors. Nothing. Just
imagine how unimportant. Like, oh, I missed United against Real last week. Oh, no, they're playing again in 10 days.
Do you know what?
That's what I was going to say. Like, because
that's a problem in US sports. I've been someone who's lived in North America for a while. I was a Raptors fan living in Toronto. There's 82 league games. No one goes there. Not one Raptors fan, diehard, goes there and actually is upset if they lose, because there's another chance in 2 nights and you will lose 30 games and make the playoffs. And like, that's the problem. North American sport, there's no jeopardy at all. Like, the games don't matter. There's nothing on them, a lot of them.
That's the problem with it. Like, because they like you were saying, like, they saw that, like, oh, like, these, you know, Champions League quarterfinals and semifinals, that's where everyone tunes in. That's where everyone's like, oh, this is the best quality of the sport. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, like, Liverpool fans love going away to these away games. They love going to Madrid. They love going to Barcelona. Let's just give them that every single year. But, like, the whole point of it is that it only comes around every couple of years, which is what makes it special. Like, Liverpool played Real Madrid there a couple of weeks ago. We know as Liverpool fans, like, off the top of our head, we played them in the final 2 years ago. We played them in 2014, 2015, where that was a shambles. And we played them in 2009, which is unbelievable. Straight away, you can be like, we remember those because we only get to play them every 4 or 5 years, or, you know, every couple of years, depending on how you're drawn. So, like, if you're playing them every single week, it's the same as if, you know, you're like, oh, yeah, I got tickets for Burnley away this year and Newcastle last year. Like, it's the same as just playing these Premier League teams every single year, because it takes away the special aspect of it. Like you were saying, if you lose, well, sure, look, we'll be playing them every year home and away for the next 20 years. So who cares?
Are we a bit mad though? Like, so obviously the level of outrage that we had at where the outrage was based at was in the right place. It was against the Super League, but we have to draw a line between being outraged at something but also not being surprised at it, because we've referenced so many times during this chat business, 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 money, money, money. You ask anybody outside of owning a football team that owns a company, what do you want to do? I want to make it successful. But success to them is having a good business, making it profitable, getting those P&L and balance sheet figures as high as you can, making it look as sustainable as possible with room for expansion. What is success to a football team? To fans, it's trophies, it's big name signings, it's reputation. But we're fans, we're forgetting who's at the top of this is those businessmen that I just referenced, who want those bottom line figures to be healthy and line pockets. Their desire to have a good reputation towards fans almost seems secondary. And that's what I suppose losing sight of it's the wrong way to put it, because as fans, we should only be focused on, I'm a Man United fan for all my life. I want to see them winning trophies. I grew up with them winning trophies. I'm now at a period for the last few years where they haven't been. You're not going to abandon shit from them. You want to see them climb the ladder and succeed again. So to me, success to them will be getting back more trophies in the cabinet, making a couple more big name signings, keeping the steady flow, knowing that Man United will always be a good club and I will continue to follow them regardless. But of course, I want to see them near the top. But then you've got the Glazers leading the show at the top. And success to the Glazers, they'll come out in these PR reports like they did today. Oh, we're sorry we lost sight of the bigger picture, which is the fans and reputations and bullshit. That's what the PR reporter thinks. It's not what Joel Glazer thinks. Joel Glazer's thinking, shit, 350 million a year at least I could have got here. How the fuck am I going to find this elsewhere? So, you know what I mean? The outrage is...
You look at the Glazers with how they spend, whether we get into the Champions League or not. So every time we secure Champions League qualification, United don't spend in that summer because they've got into the Champions League and that's the end goal for them at the moment. But then the following season, which has happened numerous times since Ferguson's left, we drop out of the top four and then they spend money to get us back into the top four. And it's been an endless cycle. And a club that's being run properly would obviously look to continue to grow and, you know, look to push on. But those decisions are very obviously made with, like you said, profit and loss at the core of it. You know, and that's a really easy way to see it, is literally whether Man United finish top four or not.
Sorry to stop. Yeah, like I don't want to harp on about it too much. I don't want to start ranting about this. But take it back to the basics, like I was referring to earlier on. Football aside, you own a construction business and you've got a load of sites on the go and you know that to spend this money, you make this money and it's sustainable for this long. You're going to maintain that and you're going to keep going steady with that. Suddenly, you realize you need another site because these ones aren't going to hit the profits you thought they would. So you get another site and you rebuild that and you make the money off that. Football teams work off the same premise. Man United were making Champions League, making the money. That's the sites they initially had. They don't need any more. They have enough coming in with what's there. Suddenly they don't make Champions League, go back to it. It's like needing that other site again. They have to pump money in here to get back what they expected originally. They need it from elsewhere. And that's
Liverpool did the exact same thing, and I was naive to think Liverpool won the Champions League, 97 points in the league, and bought Sepp van der Berg for 1.2 million quid, a 16-year-old from Holland. That was their only signing from that position of strength with lots of money flooding into the club, and they feel like they've spent what they need in the resources to get that income in. And at the time I was like, No, it's because the team is settled. And what was I thinking? Like,
Adrian is a free transfer. They splashed
yeah,
out on a free transfer.
yeah, it's like more fool me for thinking that the reason they weren't adding to the team was not to like upset a great harmony there, or that they, yeah, it's purely.
When Man United won the treble, Ferguson bought Varane and Van Nistelrooy, and he kind of ruined the team for the following season. But he saw what needed to be done to keep moving forward.
I think maybe separate point, but Sir Alex Ferguson's greatest achievement was that he managed to recycle the team like 4 times successfully.
100%. No, that like
that's genius.
No one else has done it. Guardiola has done it, I would say, with City now.
Perhaps, yeah.
He's only just starting to do it, really.
He's only just starting to do it. That's what he's done this season. But yeah, I agree.
Just on the topic, obviously we kind of discussed the managers and stuff over the last while, and I actually didn't think we'd actually mention Jose Mourinho on this podcast, but we have. I'd love to get your view, Donnacha, from a Liverpool perspective, and then Shane just on a United perspective. But do you think Klopp and Ollie will potentially walk if the ownership remains the way it is, or there's no potential change of ownership structure within the club, or there's no potential of the owners leaving or trying to leave? Can you see Klopp staying under that management? Because it's a case of, for example, again, I think we've all used the examples of working in a business, but if your boss did something like that to you, more than likely you'd probably pack up your bag and walk out the door. If someone kind of bullied you in or formed bullying or went behind your back to that extent. I'd love to get your view, Donnacha, just from Liverpool and Klopp.
Yeah, in terms of Klopp, if this had gone ahead, I think the likelihood that he was going to walk was much, much higher than what it is now. And I think Klopp answered it himself before the Leeds game when he said, I care, like paraphrasing, but he insinuated that this is his team. He cares deeply about these players on a professional and a personal level. They're his co-workers, but they're, it's a collective, and he's a responsibility to them and to the fans. And I believe that, like, the man that he is, that we all know that he is, he'll feel far more loyal to the fans and the players that he works with day in, day out than FSG. And I'm sure he is just beyond furious. And I'm sure he might be sitting down with them, like literally at this moment, and he has all these questions of John Henry. Why did you do this? Why did you not deal me in? It's very clear that he wasn't consulted. It's very clear that all the managers, none of the players, none of the managers were consulted. So whether FSG can reconcile the relationship with Klopp, I think they probably can, given all the success that they've had in the future. But whatever chance there was ever of Klopp extending beyond 2024, I believe, is now definitely gone. And he'll finish up when he finishes out his contract and maybe move on to international. But like, they have a lot of work to do. FSG have now realised the most powerful man in Liverpool Football Club is Jurgen Klopp. And the next most powerful is probably Jordan Henderson. And that's now been proven. That is now a fact. They'll never get away from that fact. So they have a big job. They need to, I don't know, buy him a bunch of flowers and a bit more, I think.
Shane, from a Man United perspective, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, can you see him potentially walking? Or, and again, if ownership doesn't change, can you see him going at some stage?
He's in a bit of a different situation than Klopp. Klopp's got a reputation and, a back catalogue of trophies and successful seasons behind him. That would probably make it easier to walk away. The one thing I will say for Solskjaer is he really seems to have a really good bond with the current Man United squad. And all of the talk that's come out this week or the last couple of days is there was actually a really good reaction by the players in terms of standing up to the ownership. And there seems to be a real good unity from that point of view going on with the club at the moment. And Solskjaer's probably in a stronger position now since he's become permanent manager than ever before. So I think he's got the players on his side. He's obviously got the fans on his side of what's going on. And I don't know. Solskjaer doesn't give away enough of himself. He's not as open as Klopp is in terms of, you know, as a person, maybe how he portrays himself. But I think they're all going to be hurt. I almost think the worst thing is, like, we were betrayed as fans, but the players and the management were betrayed so badly. Like, it was actually quite hard to watch when you saw the interviews afterwards. And like, usually you'd be cynical and go, oh, you know, they just don't want to answer the questions. But, you know, if we had have come on to do this podcast 5 minutes after, you know, finding out the news, we would have all been stuck for words. You know, we've had 3 days to digest it and think about it and talk about it. And yeah, they're all going to be hurt. And there's probably irreparable relationships there between them all. I don't think they can go back to. There's going to be a lack of trust always now. Like, I don't think you can ever go back to that trust. Like, it's done for. But Solskjaer I know I've gone away from it. Solskjaer to walk away from the Man United job, a job which he probably feels very privileged to have, would be quite a hard thing to do, I reckon. And that's not against the man. I don't want that to seem like it's something against him, but, you know, he genuinely does care. He does care as well.
I was just going to touch slightly on one of the points Shane was making there. Like that with the players. Like, they were all so entirely thrown under the bus. And, like, that's, like Shane was saying again, like, that was one of the worst aspects for me, because it was so hard to watch, because, like, these owners had made the decisions, again, purely for, you know, a greedy fucking selfish point of view. Didn't care about the clubs or the players. Like, it was so disrespectful to the players to make this decision, and then, like, the players are being told, oh yeah, you're only going to be playing this Super League, and if it goes ahead, we're going to be kicked out of the Premier League, and there's no way you're going to be allowed to play in the Champions League. And, like, all these players grew up dreaming of winning the Premier League, winning the Champions League. You know, obviously a lot of them with Liverpool, obviously in the last couple of years, have won it, but, like, to be told, oh yeah, no, you're not playing in those anymore. Oh, and as well, if it goes ahead, you're not going to be allowed to play for your country either. So, like, fuck dreams of winning the Euros or the World Cup. And, like, these players, like, they've spent their whole lives building up to it and, like, working for it. You know, like, you'd have the likes of Trent, who, like, seems like an anomaly, and he just happens to be an absolute superstar, comes up through the academy and then is straight into the team. Like, so many of these players have had to work so hard through their youth careers, and, like, you know, maybe at times have had to take a step back in terms of career progress. You know, like, they might have been at a big club, didn't get a chance. You know, even yeah, exactly. Or, like, the small, like, even slightly as well, like De Bruyne. I'm sure when he got his move to Chelsea, he was like, brilliant, this is my break now, I'm going to make it. And he didn't get a look in, and he had to go to Germany, play for Wolfsburg, like, who weren't at all considered one of the bigger German clubs at the time. But then obviously has become one of the biggest midfielders in the world, one of the biggest superstars, where, like, he persevered and plowed through that because he wanted to make a success of himself, and he wanted to win the big trophies. Where now they were all just being told, yes, sorry lads, that's just not going to happen anymore. Sorry.
But Gaz, I want to ask you this, because I know you as a person. I want to see what you think of this.
Go for it.
You're in the position of one of the big 6 English clubs. You're a player, and they tell you that this Super League is happening. It's going ahead. Do you play, or do you fight back against it? Like, suppose you're putting up the fight and seem to be getting nowhere as a collective unit. This Super League looks like it's going ahead. Do you jeopardize your career with that club, your wages every week from that club, your international prospects? Do you jeopardize all that because you don't want to lose your job? Or
it depends what club I'm at, I suppose.
Okay, we'll go United. We're United fans, right? That's your diehard. We'll go with them.
I suppose it's one of those things that it's much easier said than done if you're not actually in that position. But I'd like to think I'd be strong enough to say no to participating in the Super League. I'd like to think I'd stay loyal to the people that pay my wages every week, i.e. the fans. I'd also like to think that I'd have obviously a passion to represent Ireland at a World Cup or a Euros, so that would come into the thinking behind it. But again, I suppose it's easier for us to sit here and say, yeah, we wouldn't partake in a Super League, and I know as Shane and all of us, I think, have mentioned at some stage that a lot of the players did come out and say, and I think that's what we wanted as football fans, because I think there was obviously, I don't know, were we expecting the players and potentially the managers to come out on Sunday evening and completely bash this and slayed it straight away, but that didn't happen. So I think we were all a little bit, well, I was personally a little bit on edge that no one really came out on Sunday evening. But then as the news filters through, that you're aware that they actually weren't told or weren't given any of this information. They were given it 20 minutes before a match, before the United match, Solskjaer, and the players were given that information. So it's hard to react there and then in the moment. But to answer your question, again, I'd like to think if I was in that position, I would say no to the European Super League. But then again, as a footballer, I think we were saying on other podcasts, like, you take into consideration your family, you take into consideration how much is on your mortgage or how much you're paying for this, that, and the other every week. So, I'd like to think I wouldn't, but
Just
again,
a point that I want to make just on that, in terms of like these top players that are on a lot of money. Like, I kind of question why money matters so much to a lot of the top players. Now, aside from the wild card of getting a terrible injury a la Ryan Mason and your career is cut short, if you're a top player, you're still going to get paid very, very well. All right, if you decide to leave the Super League, maybe you're not getting paid your 800 grand a week. But if the Premier League existed as a separate entity and you could go to Leicester or West Ham, it's not like you're now on 4 grand a week. You know, like, I still, like, for me, like, I don't really, money's not really something that's a massive motive for me in general. And I know, like, I would value representing my country way above that. And that's me being honest. That's not me trying to virtue signal or grandstand or anything. I just think money's not that, because money just doesn't matter too much to me. So for that reason,
I think it's more of just a competitive thing for those players, though. They want to be playing against the top players.
Competitive. But it wouldn't matter.
Like these Super League squads would have literally had super squads, just to participate in this extra tournament. Say, like, how many extra first team players would they need? So if you multiply that by every club, like,
yeah, it's a valid point. It is a valid consideration.
Hundreds of the best players probably within this confined, group of teams. And like, if you're say a Mo Salah or a Bruno Fernandes or whoever, like, I'm sure they're full of integrity and they're full of, wanting to do the right thing and, like, financially, whatever. But you'd kind of be looking from afar and going, I should be there. I should be participating in that.
Like, maybe could it be a similar decision to, like, it's the case for Irish boxers especially. I mean, that's the Olympics is for amateur boxers only, and you have the decision of, and a lot of boxers will start their career as amateur and then move after they've represented their country in an Olympics. But it would be, do I go down the pro route and I'm in this Super League and I'm almost in sports entertainment, or do I stay and represent my country and have sporting merit as the pinnacle, as opposed?
It's still a stepping stone. They're still doing it to maybe have a better pro career.
Yeah, but some don't though. Some decide not to go.
Don't always, yeah, but
like Kenny Egan's and guys like that. Now, not all. They're kind of outliers, in fairness.
But could you still have the same motivation as a player playing in the Super League? Like, okay, very good point there that it takes more first team players and things like that. But do you lack motivation? Obviously money, but do you lack motivation as a football fan / player when you're on the pitch if every game is non-competitive? Like, do you lose that sense of, I might be playing for this, but sure, if I don't play well and we lose this game, I'm going to be here next year. I'm going to be here next week. It doesn't really matter. Like, it's almost like being a mid-table Premier League team. So at this stage of the season now, 32 odd games into the Premier League, we kind of know who's going to be in the middle of the table. That's not going up or down. It's like being them for the next X.
Always, yeah.
So you're not, I suppose we'll use Premier League teams. You're not a Man City or a Man United right now, and you're also not a Fulham or a Sheffield United that you have, good or bad, something to fight for. You're basically just sitting there saying, like, I know how I hate friendlies and challenges. I hate them. Obviously, I'd rather them over training, but I hate them. You go out and you could shoot the lights out or have the worst game ever, and you're thinking, well, all right, I'll just, I'll pick myself up again the next time, and you'll make it work. Nothing was on the line there.
Yeah, I just think that is a really, really good point, because we see it every year in the Premier League where a team is safe from relegation, is nowhere near challenging for Europe, and all the players are pretty much packing their bags, thinking about where they're going on holidays. And how many times we've seen a team just lose the motivation and drop down a couple of places again? They don't drop anywhere near relegation, but they could be, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 points above relegation. But that could have easily happened. And that was one of my first thoughts when they kind of read out the structure, the plan of the Super League, and the fact that no one gets relegated. Was obviously one winner, but I don't know, top 4, whatever way it worked. Yeah, you could have big clubs playing potentially big games, but just lacking so much. And like O'Hara said, you look forward to Real Madrid versus Liverpool every 3, 4, 5 years, but you don't want to be seeing it every second week or every third week or whatever. But
sorry to cut across you just for a split second, but like the best thing about it is, or the best thing about something as competitive as the Premier League or whatever it may be, is that you get a West Ham like this year, you get like a Leicester winning the league, you get a Sheffield United being promoted and suddenly banging up the league, and now this year they're at the complete opposite end of it. It's tops and bottoms, it's ups and downs. It's just, when you know that there's something to play for, as a fan, it makes you want to watch it. As a player, it makes you want to play for it. And like, to me, that's the bottom line. I'm not going to sit here, like, I posed the question to you. I'd be hypocritical to say that, I'd walk away and I'd hold my head high and I'd have my morals and stuff like that. If I was put in the position of a footballer, honestly don't know. I mean, there's going to be so many driving factors, like you said, that I can't honestly sit here and say I wouldn't play. I mean, I love playing football, full stop. But to me, it needs that competitiveness, and it needs to have the opportunity that, at the flick of a switch, something can change and you're in a dogfight, be it top or bottom, to know that I have to perform in the next couple of games or even the next game to either potentially get a reward or avoid a punishment. And that's just like, that's every team's driving force at the start of a season, is that whether it's naive or not, every team thinks they can be successful, and success to City could be winning it and success to Brighton could be surviving, but at least you have something to fight for from day one.
Yeah, like you can distill, all the outrage can be distilled down to that one point, that it's open competition, it's a meritocracy. It's the spectrum of glory versus jeopardy, and the pressure and all the trials and tribulations, the romantic stories, the huge collapses. The outrage of the Super League, I think, can be distilled to that. For me, it is.
Yeah,
that's one of the things that Steve Parish was saying, Crystal Palace manager, when they had him on M&F, because he was saying, look, I might be, misguided in thinking that, but the reason I'm in it is to see if we can get Crystal Palace into Europe someday, and that's his driving force behind it. Where, like, if something like this came in, like teams like that would be like, well, what's even the point? Like that, like a West Ham this year, or even when Leicester won the league, and like even going back to different Champions League, like Liverpool in Istanbul in 2005, like Liverpool were nowhere near like the standard of a club to, at that point, if they were doing it, to have been let into it. But like, that's the great thing about it. That's why everyone loves the game. That's why it's a beautiful game.
Steve was a good man. Steve Parish was a good man. He made me feel so much better when he was on Monday Night Football, because he actually called it earlier. He said, don't think that this is necessarily a very dark day for football. This could be a very good day for football. And at the time I was like, what? And he expanded to say, this is going to unite everyone against the common, there's going to be a lot of solidarity against this. And I think this is going to be a great day. And he had a big smile on his face when he was on MNF, and he was right.
It's made everybody look in the mirror at themselves.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. Like, not to go back to what we were just saying, but I live near Birmingham, so there's a lot of Aston Villa fans near me. Aston Villa stayed up on the last game of the season last year with a Jack Grealish goal, homeboy, stayed up in the division, started this season looking like they were going to get into Europe. You know, like, that would be gone. Like, that would be non-existent anymore. They went from literally nearly going back down to the Championship after coming up to making a run for Europe. And
there are so many stories like that.
Yeah.
Swansea League 2 to 6 years in the Premier League in 5 years. Bournemouth League 2 5 years in the Premier League. I think Bournemouth did back-to-back League 1 promoted, Championship promoted.
They did 3. Yeah, it was 3 promotions in like
common
6 years or something like that.
Like where Europe, I think where all the European leagues are very jealous is that is one very special quality about England that doesn't really happen elsewhere.
Like you're literally smiling talking about those stories.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they were brilliant.
Your face is beaming because you're like, it's like, that's what it's about. And I don't know how you guys. This is slightly off topic, but I was even thinking about, why do I support an English team these last few days? I was like, I don't know. It kind of made me look at myself a little bit and go.
Yeah, I think, Shane, a lot of football fans were like that. There was a lot of things going around of people trying to potentially choose another team or looking at. I
was born in Manchester, by the way. Just like, so I get away with it.
Yeah, like I never really gave the League of Ireland too much attention, and that is totally on me. And I'm kind of ashamed of myself that I didn't. Like I have a reason to follow the League of Ireland now, because early in the season, like one of my mates is top scorer, or at least he was up until a couple of games ago.
It is, I think, yeah.
And that was like, oh, we got Foley's absolutely killing it, and he's sort of a late bloomer. So I'm Finn Harps all in this season because he's doing so well. And now, on top of this, I'm definitely going to make a concerted effort to support League of Ireland. Absolutely. And I'm embarrassed at myself that I haven't until now.
I know we're on a good note now, and I'm going to play slight devil's advocate for a second, just on Steve Parish. I loved his talk on MNF and everything that went with it. But he was one of the ones that said that, remember during the COVID thing last year, that it's not the responsibility of, a supermarket to bail out a corner store. Basically saying that, they're look, I harp on about it so much, I'm shutting him out after this. But there's the businessman in him. We don't get to see whether or not he would have jumped the gun to be a Super League team because he's not in contention, as they say, by the other 6 to be picked. But what he said was great about wanting to start every season in the hope that Palace could make Europe. That's the attitude you like to see. But behind it all, they're all,
Yeah, no, you wouldn't be calling for a knighthood for Steve Parish or anything. Absolutely, yeah, bang on.
I wouldn't want the loan of a 50 off him either. I'd say, come on.
Lads, just maybe 2 things we might try touch on before we finish up. Number 1, as Donnacha mentioned, she'd love to kind of hear all our views on the potential consequences for the clubs, the owners, after obviously the decision to try enter to enter the European Super League and then obviously back out. But also I'd love to get your views on the new format of the Champions League and how UEFA are going about it, because just reading some of the criteria that were, or the structure of it, again, it was looking after the top teams that they would have qualification if they were to miss out. So is that not quite similar to the European Super League in some aspect? O'Hara, I might come to you first on that one, maybe just the consequences.
Yeah, it's a hard one to call, really, isn't it? Because obviously when the news came out initially, everyone was like, you know, obviously like Gary Neville on Sky was like, oh, dock them points, fine them, relegate them. And like at the time you're like, yeah, absolutely, like they entirely deserve it. Like they've been so disgraceful and disrespectful to all the other clubs. But then like when you see the likes of Klopp and all coming out, like, you know, having to be the ones to bear the brunt of all the questions, and you're kind of like, these lads had nothing to do with it. Like these have fought and have been fighting to try and get into the Champions League. Players and the staff and the manager had absolutely nothing to do with it. So like it's hard to justify the argument, in my opinion anyway, or to find a good reason to be like, grant, dock them 10 points or relegate them or do whatever. I think really, in my opinion, the only thing that they can do justifiably is find the owners, or find the clubs and target the owners, because they've all come out like that with the John Henry one. Even if it's not necessarily true, you know, like Billy Hogan, the CEO, I'm sure was involved at some stage. But to have, like, Henry has come out and been like, this was all on me. I was the sole reason for all this happening. And like the staff, the whole club, you know, love working for the club and they had nothing to do with it. So then, Grant, we should fine him. So I'm not sure how you'd go about it, you know, like separating it, that he specifically or the company specifically gets fined. I always find these things so trivial as well, because like even thinking like the likes of the City scandal earlier on in the season, where it looked like they were definitely going to be thrown out of the Champions League, and then they get off on a technicality because they were like, oh yeah, no, they did break the rules, but it was just a little bit too long ago, so it was slightly out of the time frame, so hands are tied. You know, like that's a load of bull. Like if they did it, they should be punished for it. You know, and like everyone knew it. It was right there in black and white. Man City had broken the rules of FFP, so why aren't they getting punished for it? And nothing happened. So it should be the owners, and they should be heavily punished, because they like genuinely threatened to ruin the game as we know it. And like a lot of people I know are hugely passionate fans. Like any of the lads in the WhatsApp group and all of us here on the podcast, like we absolutely love our club, you know. And like obviously there's the tribalism, and like, you know, being a Liverpool fan, I'd be like, oh, why would you bother supporting United? But like you'd always have respect for passionate fans of other clubs, even if it's a fan or if it's a club you're not interested in, because you're passionate for your club. You love this club. Like, you know, Donnacha, I'm sure, would be the same. Like, we've supported this team for over 20 years. We absolutely love this club. You know, Jurgen Klopp, Jordan Henderson, absolutely love these guys. We'll go to fucking war for them. And then for the owner to just come out and throw the whole club under the bus to such an extent that, like, any of the passionate fans I know, and me included, Donnacha, any of us that were saying it at the time, it was genuinely being like, if this goes ahead, I'm not following Liverpool anymore. And like, you know, you're like, I have every Liverpool home jersey since I started following them. I fucking reams of Liverpool jerseys and Liverpool memorabilia, and you know, all the memories of going to matches and stuff, where you're like, if it happens, like, am I ever even going to be able to like morally wear the jerseys again? Do you know, because you're like just so ashamed of where it has gone had it happened. So I just think like putting the fans through such emotional turmoil, and it has been. And like, again, like, you know, obviously if you're in the office, like obviously I've been in the office the last few days and like some of the girls be like, what are you on about? Why are you getting so like stressed over this? And I'm like, you know, it's football, it's not going to happen. Or if it does, sure, look, you know, football will still be on. They're like, no, like, and it only ever like occurred to them that it could actually be a real thing, because they were like, would you stop supporting Liverpool? And I was like, yeah, if it happens, I'll be done with them. And like, it's only then you're like, fuck, this is a big thing.
They're the very ones that I cry over Coronation Street. And
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
I've been getting shit. Like a lot of my good mates would be way more rugby heads. They don't give a shite about football. They call it soccer. Totally, that's fine. And it doesn't compute to them why I was so pissed off. It was like, in the WhatsApp, is Decan down yet? Like, is he all right? Like, what is he having an emotional breakdown? And kind of a bit of ridicule there. But I mean, people are passionate about any sorts of things. Exactly as Eno said, some people are just, that character in that show means everything to them. And if they get killed off, they're devastated for a couple of days. Whatever your jam is, like, it would be shit to live a life without passion. Like, if your passion is for fashion, I don't understand it, don't get it. But I respect it's your passion, and that it goes for everything. There's no thing that you should be ashamed to be passionate about if you truly are. So
rugby fans should understand the lack of competition, to be fair.
Exactly. Six Nations, prime example. Like, literally, Italy should have been chucked out years ago. But look, just on
it annoys the fuck out of me, and it has for 15 years.
On what Dave was saying there about clubs not being punished. Like, I remember I was leaving, I was after doing a bit of running the other day, and I was just checking my phone afterwards, and one of the lads was asking me, like, what do you think should be done? And at the time I was just vexed, and I was like, oh, I'd be deducting points. It was basically following off what Gary Neville had said: deduct them points, find them, take money, whatever you have to do. And I was kind of thinking to myself, like, if you're going to abandon the Premier League and you're going to abandon the Champions League, then your earnings from the Premier League and the Champions League for the last year, you just don't get them. Simple as. You get either, if you got them, pay them back, or you don't get them, or whatever. But it's punishing the club. There's only 6 people that should be punished in all this. There's not all those staff. Like, the audacity of them, like, contemplating furloughing staff, Arsenal letting people go, and then behind the scenes making these 350 million. So, like, the real interesting factor is going to come when JP Morgan's legal thing starts.
Yeah.
And that's where the owners will be first of all punished, I hope. I think it's coming out of their pocket outside of the entities that are City, Chelsea, Liverpool, United, Spurs and Arsenal. Outside of those entities, that they're footing legal costs and, early release of contracts and termination of contracts and every cost that comes with it that JP Morgan have, because they backed it. It's been claimed, it's been signed. I mean, that's binding. Now you have to break it, and to break it costs a lot of dollars. So
that's exactly it. The punishment has to fit the crime, and the crime here is not a sporting one. It's an anti-sport one. So you can't punish sporting people for something that happened in a boardroom. What do these people care about? And this is a very small group, as Ian says, of conspirators. This is a conspiracy almost. So you can confine it into one room of people who made this happen. So the punishment fits the crime. What do they care about? Money. How are you going to go after them? Take their money, whatever way that is. Yeah, mobilize legal teams, have a look in the small print, see if there's ways for them to be sued. It could get messy, and the clubs might suffer for it in the short term, which would be really unfortunate collateral damage. But I think it's more important to make sure the owners suffer than, in my opinion, it's more important to make sure the owners suffer than the club doesn't at all.
Yeah, there's going to be a bit of crossfire, unfortunately. I think as a bare minimum, money has to go from the clubs that were involved to grassroots football. So whether it be, each club gets fined, say, 10 million, which is nothing, I know that, but just as a figure, 10 million each, but that 10 million doesn't go to the FA and disappears. That 10 million goes to lower league clubs, goes to stadiums around the country, take it off them, but actually put the money back in to the sport, and almost make a point about the fact that this is your fault. Like, you were trying to damage football at its roots. So we're going to take the thing that you care about, which is money, and we're going to give it to the thing you were trying to kill, which was football at a level that you just don't even care about or even know exists, basically.
They should send Divock Origi down to Gillingham and Lindelof to Southend, and they'll probably get worse.
It's just like when the Gaelic footballers used to come around to the school,
Yeah.
Yeah. Except, oh no, you're not allowed back on the bus. This is you now for the rest of your contract.
I don't think Premier League footballers would be drunk bringing the trophy around to the school either, but
No.
it's for another day.
Outfit from the night before.
Oh, fact. Heineken down the front of the top and everything.
Yeah, just finish on maybe just the new Champions League format. O'Hara, kind of that we'll let you start off on that. What your thoughts are?
Yeah, I think like when you first start reading about it, I was actually only looking at it this morning. Like when you first start reading about it, it seems relatively interesting. You know, like it's 36 teams instead of 32, and it's going to be, instead of the 8 groups of 4 that it is at the moment, it'll be just a 36 team league. And then we actually look at how the competition then breaks down. You'll be playing 10 of those teams. So you're not playing all the teams, you're playing 10 random teams. And you'll play 5 home, 5 away. You won't necessarily, you won't be playing Real Madrid home and away. You may play them once or you may play them not at all. But it's mad how it'll be broken down to like top 8 get into the last 16. And then 9 to 24, I think, go down, and they basically do a last 32. So they all play. So the top 8 of those are seeded against the other 8, and they play like around a 32 two-legged tie against each other.
It's almost like a wild card weekend in the
NFL. Totally.
It's wild card weekend.
Yeah. So like they then play against each other in a two-legged tie to try and get through to the last 16, which obviously then is the start of all of the two-legged ties. So like I find it interesting in the concept, because it's like, oh, that'll be interesting. I haven't really seen that type of a format before. Then like me and one of the lads were looking at it this morning and kind of chatting about it, and like it's mad. You could finish 10th, we'll say, in it, but you could still win the Champions League, because you go into this last 32 and then you could just get a good run and be a good run of form and you could win it. But if you were to go that route, if you finished 9th to 24th and were to win the Champions League, you have to win 19 games, or not win, you'd have to play 19 games and obviously qualify through them. So it seems mental how it has evolved over the years, where like back when it was the European Cup, it was just straight knockout. So you could win the Champions League or the European Cup, sorry, at the time, going through only 7 or 8 games, and then obviously it's the Champions League at the moment. So I think all of that, I was like, okay, that's interesting. It'll be a cool new way of doing it. But then where there's the 4 spots that you don't have to necessarily qualify, that these are done on coefficients, and there'll be a country. I think one of the spots is you get in as like the highest qualified team to not have qualified, as in the highest placed team to not have qualified, but were in last season's Champions League or Europa League.
Basically.
Yeah, exactly. So again, this is why UEFA coming out so strongly against the Super League is so hypocritical in one way, because it's like they're coming out being like, oh, this is such bullshit, like we're surrounded by snakes, and like, what are you, like, you're trying to sneak a similar concept.
There's more venomous snakes than you are, and that's what pisses them off.
That's genuinely the first time I've heard about the new Champions League format, how it actually works.
I absolutely hate the new Champions League format. What is the best thing about the Champions League? The knockout stages.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the best sports
have them though
every year.
They
knockout Champions League.
But they
What's the worst bit about the Champions League? The group stages. Right, let's make that longer and more matches. Literally, the way that the Champions League has become is there's 1, maybe 2 good groups every year, and that's it. The rest of them are terrible and are a foregone conclusion. And now
it's a bigger foregone conclusion.
Games.
I think it almost makes it worse in that the chance of a small, like, could Slavia Prague, were they in the Champions League and dropped down? Let's just say they were. I don't know if they were or not. But could they fluke getting out of the group stage? Just about. There's a
Yeah, no, I agree.
if they get a soft draw, if they get a Porto and a
one, they need one underdog victory, not 5.
Yeah, but will they get out? Will they get top 10 in 10 games? Come on. Like, my view on it is, as another thing, the jeopardy of the teams that are just below the automatic qualifiers. Like I said, if you're 13th and you're almost guaranteed a playoff spot, but you know, like there's 3 games left and you're 4 points behind getting into the automatics, you might just sack those 3 games off, knowing that you're gonna be a decent seed to get the back door, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other thing is, the 4 people that qualify that are hand selected, get fucked with that. Absolutely not. On any circumstance should that be allowed. That if it's just a financial fail safe. If a team performs that poorly, if Ajax have a nightmare and finish 5th in the Eredivisie, sorry lads, maybe you should have changed your formation in December.
You know, it's kind of funny though in a way, because we spent so long slating the Super League about being, like, you know, arseholes for trying to take the big clubs and make their own way of doing things. Like, they've suddenly just chucked the rule book out the window and remade the Champions League to have more bigger teams and more games where big teams will play big teams. Basically, as Shane described it, they're expanding the group stage. But it's going to be big teams versus big teams. But because this is being forwarded and completed by an organisation like UEFA, it won't get the backlash. But because the Super League was by club owners in a more selfish act, it got a severe amount of backlash. But imagine if this proposal was put forward by a number of owners that said, we want to make the Champions League group stage, as we'll call it, a little bit longer so we can have more good teams in it and generate more revenue, and rather than guaranteed, you know, 6 group games or whatever, we're guaranteed how many every you are, and that rather than it just being, you know, 8 twos that go on to the next round, let's make it fucking even longer than that so we've more chance of getting further and generate more revenue. Like, the Champions League is meant to be a reward. The reward is still there. It's just become slightly easier for bigger teams to get it now. But
it's all relative, isn't it? It's like, this is a terrible analogy, but you know, if you're looking, let's say, right, you've done some bad shit, and you're looking at 10 years in jail, right? And you're thinking 10 years in jail, and then all of a sudden you're, oh no, hang on, I can get you 4 years in jail, and you're like, 4 years in jail, great, fine, no problem. You know, being all relative in the sense that the Super League was your 10 years. This isn't. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this either. At least it's still open competition. Still will be loads of dead games. Still will be the big clubs absolutely spanking smaller clubs. Can't really control that to a certain extent.
Yeah,
bad analogy. Cut that out, will you?
Leave it in.
That's definitely staying in, Donnacha.
That's the highlight for
episode. Delete the whole episode.
As O'Hara said, that's the highlight going up on Instagram on Friday.
What's the snippet? 10 years in jail or 4 years in jail?
Why do I do it to myself?
Good news, Aston Villa 1-0 up after 1 minute against City.
Yeah, John.
Oh, wow.
But just to finish up on UEFA there, I think Shane mentioned earlier that kind of everything over the last 48, 72 hours has made kind of people look at themselves in the mirror. But I really think UEFA, FIFA have to take a huge look at themselves, and they have to start. And maybe, I don't know, because there was obviously so much wrong with football over the last number of years. But hopefully maybe this might be the start of something better for football going forward. Like Steve Harris said, he was optimistic about it. So hopefully, I don't know whether we all share that sort of view, whether it could be a turning point, a day in history to remember for football for the better rather than the worse. But lads, thanks again for joining us on the Fancy Kickabout podcast. really, really good chat. Hope we were able to get a bit of the rants and the vent out of us and the anger over the last couple of days. But gents, we hope to catch you soon and have you back on again, hopefully for better times.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Boys, pleasure.